What's up, people? This is the second part of my story, once again dedicated to the Mormon doctor, Brother Mike, Dr. Michael Horton. He's been a very good friend to me. I call him my brother because he is my brother. He's family to me. His beautiful family, and have also accepted me as one of their own, God sent. Anyway, so as growing up in Long Beach, California, on the east side, we had family that lived all over LA on my dad's side, on the Mexican-American side. I had my cousins out in Florence. I had some other cousins out in Pico Rivera. I really didn't know them, but my cousins in Huntington Park and Florence area, I knew them really good. My Aunt Ramona, rest in peace. My family goes back so far that my dad, Antonio, Tony, rest in peace, my Chicano dad, and my Uncle Joe, who I never met, Uncle Joe and my dad would go and rent a horse and buggy downtown LA at the Grand Central Market for $1 a day. They'd rent a horse and buggy, and they would go pick oranges all day. There was no skyscrapers yet. It was all orange groves. And they would rent the horse and buggy at the Grand Central Market, once again for $1 a day. They would go pick oranges all day and then sell them, and then give the money to my Grandma Gonzalez to help her, my Native American Grandma Gonzalez from Silver City, New Mexico. They would give her the money to help her pay the bills. My dad grew up around a barrio called La Macy, by the LA County Jail, where the LA County Jail was built. One day while visiting me there, my dad said, he was looking around, and I was in the high-power module visiting a little one-man cage with a little stool and a phone, and you're behind the glass, and my dad was sitting on the other side. I was in a cage, though, handcuffed to the little window. One handcuff here, and my free hand here, talking on the phone in the little cage, and my dad was looking around the visiting room, and he said, "This is about where my grandma, he said, well, my mom's house used to be when we grew up here in La Macy." That was the name of the barrio there. And my aunts were raised 1 street over in Dogtown, where the projects are right there. They were raised in Dogtown. They lived on that side with, I guess, with their husbands. You know, they were already married and young. They got married real young, and their husbands were from that side of the tracks, or that side of the tracks, actually, because there is some tracks that run behind the LA County Jail. So that's where my Diaz were raised, at the Dogtown projects. My dad was raised on this side with my grandma Gonzalez, rest in peace, where the LA County Jail was built. My uncle, he would go over to Flats, Primera Flats. He would hang out over that way in a neighborhood called Flats. One time I was in the prison in the California State prison system, and I was at Soledad, and I was young then. I went there when I was 18, and I had a C79031 number, an old prison number, C number, and I was getting ready to parole to a halfway house, and there was a dude that we used to call the Silver Fox from Primera Flats, and he says, "Zambrano," that name rings a bell. He goes, "I used to know Zambrano that hung around in my neighborhood in Flats. He was from Primera Flats, the Silver Fox. Neto was his name, old man Neto. He was an old timer. He had salt and pepper hair. That's why we called him the Silver Fox, the homies." Anyway, so I said, "Yeah, I go, I have a deal that I never met. His name was Joe." And right away he said, "Joe Zambrano." He said, "Yeah, I grew up with Joe over in the projects, where the projects are now, over in Primera Flats. In my audio, he goes, yeah, I knew your Uncle Joe really good. I was in Folsom with them too, old Folsom. Anyway, so I ended up going to the halfway house, and my dad came to visit me once, and Neto also went to the same halfway house. It was called Four Seas on 38th and Grand. And upon visiting me there, him and my dad saw each other and started talking. They shook hands, they gave each other a hug. They knew each other from the 50s and the 60s. So, yeah, they stood there talking about old times. And when my dad was living in La Mesa, where the LA County Jail was built, they ran them off and they made it a landfill, a dump. That's where the city of LA would dump all their trash. It was a landfill. And then afterwards, they built Twin Towers in the LA County Jail first, and then Central Jail, and then later on Twin Towers. And that's why when Twin Towers first opened, it sank 2 inches, because Pops was right. It was on a landfill. They built it on a landfill. That's why it sank, and it delayed it from opening for a few months. They had to, fix the foundation in order to open Twin Towers. But anyway, yeah, so we had a lot of history in LA. Dogtown, Alpine, where Alpine and La Mesa is, Flats. And then my tias later moved to Huntington Park in the 60s and late 60s. And they stayed there until the day they died, off of 67 in Holmes. Anyway, so I knew a lot of people from Florence. I used to run around over there with the homies. I knew a lot of good camaradas from Florence. I'm not going to say their names in front of them, but if they see this video, they know who I'm talking about. Good, really good camaradas from Florencia. And even though our neighborhoods didn't get along, I've known these people for so long, being, that I used to visit my tia since I was knee-high, since I was a toddler, till I, became an older gentleman. I continued visiting my tia and my cousins there for the longest, so I knew all the cats around there, and I knew a lot of them from prison too, but also from the streets, because I've been running around in Huntington Park and Florence area for so long that they accepted me, even though our neighborhoods didn't get along. Even some of the youngsters that were running around there, they let me hang out there. They didn't have no beef with me because I was cool with them. Shout out to the homies from Florencia. It's a really good really good gente out there in Florencia. My camarada Harpo, that's I was really close to Harpo, Ronnie's brother. Flaco and Sporty, those were camaradas. I'm not saying anything to front them off, I'm just saying that I know them, I don't like fronting anybody off, because you guys already know that watch my videos. I'm not here to front anybody off or incriminate anybody or anything of that nature, but yeah, so Green Eye Jesse and all them, I know so many of them, criminal, I know, like I said, so many of them. I'll be here all day naming them all. Old Man Paulie. When I was in Soledad prison, Neto and Kojak Porcellis and Kojak used to date, mess around with my cousin Becky. So when I was in Soledad, he found out Becky was my cousin. When I paroled, they made me some boxing gloves out of the Camel Packs, little boxing gloves. They made them out of back then you could smoke Camel non-filters, and they would save the empty packs, and they would make picture frames and all that, and the Camel Packs. And they made me some boxing gloves, and wrapped up in blue cellophane with the Camel Packs. So they were like a shade of blue, because for the South Side. And I took those gloves with me when I paroled. And while I was in the prison there, my cellie was Johnny Sanchez from Clanton, and I was always getting in fights. I was always in the hole. I was on the boxing team there to let out some of my anger. I used to fight on the yard a lot, in other prisons as well. And I ended up joining the boxing team there. And Johnny would watch me spar inside of the gym before they put beds in there. They had a boxing ring, heavy bags, beat bags, double end bags. In the prison, they would put the boxing ring out on the yard and have fights there. So that's back in the 80s, and when I had my C number. And so Johnny one day said, "Hey man, Sally, you ever think about going professional when you get out?" And I said, "Yeah, that's crossed my mind." And he's like, "My friend Ed, he's deceased now, that's why I mentioned him, he's Italiano. He owns a striptease club in Hawthorne and Lenox right there in Inglewood, right there by the library. It's called Harvey Supper Club, where you can eat a steak dinner and watch the girls strip on stage. It was a striptease club. He owned it, Ed did. Anyway, Johnny's deceased now, he's rest in peace, so is Ed. So I'm going to speak on this just because they're both deceased. Johnny used to rob jewelry stores. That's why he was doing time in Soledad for armed robbery. And being that his sisters, Connie and Bonnie, they were twins. They were real beautiful girls. They used to strip at his club. They were strippers. As strippers that he had there at the Harvey Supper Club. So he called Ed on the phone and he hooked me up with Ed. Ed said, "Yeah, when you get out, come see me." So in 1986, I believe it was, yes, I was paroled. I went to the place to, so before I get into that, Johnny would rob the jewelry stores, and he would sell a lot of the gold and diamonds to Ed. Ed loved them like a son. They were very close, and that's how I ended up hooking up with Ed. Just so you guys know a little bit of the insight here. So I get out and I go visit Ed, and he told me that wasn't his real name, that he was originally from Chicago, and that he was Italian mafia, and he had another fighter named S.T. Gordon, and he was a cruiserweight champ, WBC, and he was trying to get another guy that was WBC flyweight champ from East LA, from Hazard, named Joey Olivo. He was trying to get him. But anyway, so he got me my boxing license. He was going to send me to the Hoover Street gym, but I didn't really like the Hoover Street because they were mostly African-American trainers and fighters that were there at the Hoover Street gym in South Central LA. And I said, "Is there another gym maybe that I can go train at?" And he's like, "Yeah, if you want to train around the Chicanos, I can send you to the Main Street gym, downtown LA." Since I was living with my dad in the Pico Union area, and I had just left the halfway house, and I'm staying with Pops off of Pico Magnolia, right there in the Pico Union area. I said, "Yeah, that's on 18th and Grand behind the Olympic Auditorium." Sure enough, I ended up there, and I started training. We went and did the physical, and then we went got the license. George Johnson was a commissioner at the State Building downtown LA on the 5th floor there, off of Spring Street, I believe it was, or Hill Street. On the 5th floor, we went in there, and Ed showed his boxing license. Freddie Marino, the Mexican Godfather for the Main Street gym, he showed his professional trainer's license to train professional fighters. They looked at my medical exam, and the doctor signed me off that I could fight pro. And we paid the $25. Ed did. He paid the $25 that sign-up fee that you have to pay the State Athletic Commission to become professional. Back then, it was $25. And George Johnson gave me a receipt with the registration number in the upper right-hand corner. He said, your hands are registered now as deadly weapons, and this is your registration number right here on top of the receipt on the upper right-hand corner. It had some numbers. He goes, "That's your registration number as a pro fighter." He goes, "Your hands are now registered once again as a professional. Don't be getting in fights out there in the street. If you do, you're going to be charged with attempted murder and assault with a deadly weapon because your hands are not registered as a professional fighter." And we ended up going back to the Main Street gym. I was now a professional fighter. I was daily sparring partner for Jaime Garza, the WBC super bantamweight champ of the world. He had the belt, the WBC belt. He was undefeated, 37-0 with 36 knockouts. He was undefeated, and all his fights were by knockout except for one. And he had the belt, and He made me his first sparring partner of the day. Rene Arredondo was there at the gym, the super lightweight champ. He knocked out Lightning Lonnie Smith at the Olympic on Cinco de Mayo in the 5th round to top it off on the 5th of May in front of a bunch of Chicanos and Mexicanos. They went crazy that night when he stopped Lightning Lonnie Smith and took the belt from him. He was there. Lupe Aquino, the middleweight champ, was there. Pinkman Thomas, the heavyweight champ, WBC, he was there. My old friend that was with me in Soledad prison, he was Colombian too, like me. Well, I'm half Colombian, half Mexican. He was full-blooded Colombian. Bernardo Mercado, he knocked out Ernie Schaefer's and Trevor Berbick. He beat Bob Foster. He beat a lot of big heavyweight names. He was a highly ranked Colombian from Cartagena, Colombia, heavyweight. Him and Animal Lopez used to fight, spar together at the Main Street Gym. They were sparring partners. Rest in peace, Animal from Hazard. So Hazard, Animal was still in jail, and I didn't have any gear, so I used to use his headgear. It said Hazard Grande on it in embroidered Old English letters. One glove had a B, the other one had an H for Big Hazard. His kidney protector said El Animal Chingon on it in embroidered Old English letters as well. And I used to use his sparring gear to spar with Garza. And one day, Animal came in. He got paroled from prison. He was at Chino, I think it was. And his brother, Bootsy, came to the gym and he saw me using his gear. And he's like, "Hey, what the fuck you doing wearing my gear? Who the fuck are you anyway?" And I'm like, "I'm Mondo from Longo." He's like, "Man, who gave you permission to use my sparring gear? The fuck?" And then I started to take off the gloves. He was a big boy. Dude was crazy as hell too. He looked crazy as hell. And he was a heavyweight. So I said, "Here," I started taking it. He goes, "Nah, I'm just joking." He goes, "You can use it, kid. Who are you, by the way?" And I said, "Once again, Mondo from Eastside Longo." And he's like, "All right." He shook my hand. And he said, "Go ahead, spar." And he watched me spar with Garza. And I was Garza's first sparring partner of the night. I made my pro debut at the Chuck Landis Country Club in Reseda. I fought Greg Ortega for a purse of $400 for 7-11 promotions. That was my pro debut. My manager, Ed, the Italiano, he gave all the guys that were my friends from the halfway house. I was still in contact with them, even though I was living at my dad's. He gave them all tickets to the fight at the Chuck Landis Country Club in Reseda, for Sherman Way and Reseda Boulevard. And they went and watched me fight Sleepy from Sandra, Eddie Boy Termite from the Avenues, a couple other camaradas from 18 that were at the halfway house. They went and watched me when I made my pro debut. Anyway, Rene, Sandra, Sleepy from Sandra, Big Ed's son from Sandra. I think he's rest in peace now. And Termite, Eddie Boy from Avenues 43. I used to run around over there in Avenues with him. I was friends with Pee Wee from the Avenues, the big homie, and his little brother, Little Pee Wee. I knew a lot of them guys from Avenues too. I was running all over LA. When I was living off of Pico and Union, I was hanging out with Fly from Playboys. He was at the halfway house with me, and he later got out, and he was living on Fedora Street, right down the street from my dad's on Pico and Magnolia. He lived on Fedora, and that's all Playboy's neighborhood. It's like a brownstone. As soon as you walk in, they got a big-ass mural, and they have an old brownstone building that looks like New York with the stairs outside where people sit out there like you do in New York. It was only brownstone on that block, and that was their street. It was 1 block long. That was Fedora Street, and kicking it right there with Jasper and them from Playboys, from Westside Playboys, and they knew I grew up around 18, but they knew I was from Longo, so they weren't tripping on me, you know. They knew I was raised around the West Side at 18 when I was younger, but I was now, jumped into Eastside Longo. I never got jumped into 18, but I used to know a lot of them because of my sister. Once again, my first video, I talked about that. She used to go to King Junior High. All her homeboys were from West Side 18. So I used to hang out right down the West Side with the vatos from Playboy. One time I was in there with Fly and Jasper and them. went outside from Playboys and they came in. All three of them got shot. And it was funny because they came in, one got shot in the side and it went right through. So he didn't go to the hospital, he just cleaned the hole where the bullet went through, right here on the side, by his waist. It was a clean hole, it went right through the bullet. But Jasper got shot in the leg, and he took off his shoe, and he turned it upside down, and a bullet fell out of his shoe. He had like state boots on, like those quarter, high top brown state boots that they used to give in prison. He was wearing some of those, so he turned his shoe upside down and a fucking bullet fell out of his shoe. It was inside of his shoe. Shit was crazy. The dudes from 18 did a drive-by on him while I was in the pad with Fly and his girl and a couple of their homegirls. We were partying right there, Fedora Street. And so my dad lived over down the street on Pico and Magnolia, so there was crazy riders in the alley back there. There was vatos from 18th Street on the next block over, Spooky and them that I used to go to Belmont High School with. Spooky from the 18, the one that had 18 block letters, 1-8 on his back, an old type with tip shading, 1-8 real old, like a teardrop on the bottom, but 1 and then an 8 with the teardrop bottom like that shaded. He had that on his back, but I said 18 real big. We went to Belmont High School together for a few weeks while I was living with my dad. I went to the high school there, Belmont High School, at night school, not in the day, but there was still a lot of their homies from 18 there, vatos from Diamond and shit. They used to get into fights all the time in the rec yard of the school. Anyway, so I started boxing at the Main Street Gym, and I met Russo from Harpies. He was one of my sparring partners. He was a welterweight. One time he took me to Harpies neighborhood and to their park. They had a park over there on the other side of Pico Union. That was their parque with a lot of Harpies would chill, and we were on the same boxing little equipment room. He had all his sparring gear hanging from a nail inside Freddie Marino's little stall at the Main Street Gym. So I had my equipment in there. Once Ed bought me my own headgear, my own gloves, so I wouldn't have to use Animal Lopez. Animal Lopez was hanging from another nail. Jaime Garza's equipment was hanging from another nail. Mine was hanging from this nail. Russo's was over here from Harpies. We were on the same little stall. We had the same trainer, Freddie Marino. Anyway, so Benny Giorgino's fighter, Jaime Garza, we were all under Freddie Marino's watch. He was our trainer. Animal Lopez too. Anyway, so Johnny Montes and his brother Herman Montes, they were all right there. And there was a lot of big name Chicano fighters at the Main Street Gym. It was very, very well known for Mexican American great world champions like Bobby Chacon would come through there. Little Red Lopez, champ, used to wear the Indian headdress, the chief feathers on his head. Salvador Sanchez, Gato Gonzalez from Mexico, Rene Arredondo, like I said earlier, Lupe Aquino, Eddie Diano Lopez, was an African American dude, Blinky Wright, he was there. Trevor Burbank, Pinklin Thomas used to spar on the second floor where the heavyweights would spar. And we had another ring downstairs on the second floor. Third floor was once again for the heavyweights. Bernardo Mercado would be up to the heavyweight sparring with Pinklin Thomas or Trevor Burbank. Mostly Pinklin Thomas. He would always spar with him. He was the champ. Pinklin had the belt at the time. He ended up fighting Trevor Burbank. I think Mercado knocked Trevor Burbank out in 2 rounds. Yeah, he knocked him out in the second round for a scheduled 10-rounder. Bernardo was a good fighter. He was from Colombiano, big Colombian, light-skinned Colombiano, white like me, and black hair comb back. big old vato. He was in with me. He was busted for trafficking cocaine in Soledad prison, and we were there together. And he put on a show up there too. Knocked out some heavyweight dude at the prison there from Fort Ord Army Base. They came into the prison to put on a show. The Fort Ord Army Base boxing team. Bernardo knocking out this big black dude that was a heavyweight soldier from Fort Ord. He knocked him out in the first round. I became really good friends with Bernardo. Adan Wolfboy Estrada from the Heartbeats, he was there. He was an ex-pro fighter. He was there. Carlitos Ortiz from National City, San Diego. He was there. There was quite a few camaradas at Soledad Prison that were professional fighters as well. I lost my license because it had me not answer one of the questions on the California State Athletic Commission, one of the questionnaires, the questionnaire that you have to sign up before you turn pro. One of the questions asked, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And they told me to leave that blank, so I did. And it asked if you've been convicted of a felony, or if you're on parole and all that. And I left all that blank because they had told me to. But he said, don't worry about it. George Johnson is a good friend of mine. He was mob, Italian mob. He had connections. He was well connected with the WBA, especially. The president was from Panama City at the time. And he was really good friends with Ed. So Ed told me, just leave it blank. But George Johnson retired, and they got a new commissioner. I thought his name was Olmos. I think it was Olmos. I'm not sure, but I think it was Olmos. The new commissioner, and he was ex-LAPD. And when I went to weigh in for the McCoy fight, that was at the Choclantes Country Club as well, he saw fresh tracks on my arms, and I was already tatted all up. As a young man, as a 21-year-old, I was already all sleeved up, and he saw the prison tats, and he's like, you've been to prison, I saw your file, and you left that question blank. He said, I could tear up your contract right now for 7 year promotions to fight McCoy, but I'm going to go ahead and let you fight the 4-rounder. It's only a 4-rounder, but after the bout, I'm going to do some investigating about you, Mr. Zambrano, in regards to you, because I know you've been in prison. Those are prison tattoos that you got. Plus, you got fresh needle marks on your arm. I was starting to use already. And that's how I ended up losing my license. They suspended me. I got a letter from the California State Athletic Commission and another letter from the Consumer Affairs, both addressed to the Main Street Gym. And one letter had a suspension from the State Athletic Commission, California State Athletic Commission, and the other one was from Consumer Affairs. I opened that one up, that letter, and it had a suspension as well. And they ended up terminating me. I lost my license because of that. The guy almost was after me, the cop, LAPD cop. He didn't like me because he knew I was lying. When he asked me if he'd been in prison, I said no. And he said, oh, those are prison tattoos. Plus, you got fresh needle marks. He's like, go ahead, fight the 4-rounder once again, but after the bout, I'm going to investigate you. And he did. So he terminated me, and that was the end of my boxing career. But anyway, that's why if you try to look for my name in boxing, nothing will come up. The few fights that I had, they just swept them under the rug because they were illegal fights. I didn't wait for the actual receipt to come in the mail from Sacramento, from the State Athletic Commission. I used the receipt that we used to pay the $25 fee to get the license. I used that receipt to sign individual contracts with 7 different promotions to fight 4-rounders. All my fights were $400, $100 a round at the Choclantes Country Club. So anyway, I ended up losing my license, and I was into that. But I did a lot of sparring. I continued to go to the different gyms, Azteca Gym with Gato Morphine from South Los, Jimmy Montoya's gym, Azteca Boxing in Huntington Park, or is that Bell Gardens? It might be Bell Gardens. But anyway, it's Azteca Boxing. It's in South Central LA, put it that way. He owned it. He had Camacho. Camacho came from New York
before he retired. His last few fights were out of the Azteca Boxing in LA, South Central LA. Gato Marfin lived in the gym from South Wales. He fought Ungaro Martinez, knocked him out at Los Plaza de Toros in Tijuana, but it was a non-title fight. It was just a 10-rounder. He filled in for some other dude that was supposed to fight. Azabache Martinez's brother, Ungaro Martinez, he had a belt too, a WBC flyweight belt. And Gato Marfin fought him 10 rounds just because he was filling in for somebody else, so it was a non-title fight. He would have been world champ that day. He knocked out Ungaro Martinez at Plaza de Toros in Tijuana. He was raising pit bulls in the back there. I would go back there and help him feed his little pit bull puppies. He lived at the gym. I would go and spar with him. I sparred once with Hector Camacho, the champ. We used to do a lot of sparring at the Main Street gym, and like I said, I was Jaime Garza, the champ, WBC super bantamweight champ of the world. I was his daily sparring partner Monday through Saturday. We would only take Sundays off. He would take me to go eat in his Corvette, his Stingray. We'd go eat on Sunday, and then Monday back to sparring. It was 4 rounds of sparring. First sparring partner of the day was me, and then a dude named Terrence, a Korean dude, would spar 4 rounds, and then Javier de la Cruz from Harpies, the welterweight, he would spar the last 4 rounds with Garza. We were, all 3 of us, me, Terrence, and Javier from Harpies, we were his daily sparring partner. And so one time we were at the state building, and we were waiting in to fight McCoy, and Carl McCoy, and Ed said, man, this Korean dude that's here right now, I just sent 2 hitmen to Japan, or Korea, I mean, to kill this son of a bitch. My fighter, S.T. Gordon, fought his fighter, the Korean Rocky, and S.T. beat him. This motherfucker burned me for $1 million. He was venting, because he saw him at the weigh-in. He was on another card, and that he saw that promoter from Korea there that had the Korean Rocky. So Ed turned red. He was mad. He was, son of a bitch, I just sent 2 hitmen to kill this son of a bitch for burning me for $1 million. When my boy fought his boy, the Korean Rocky in Korea, son of a bitch never paid me my part of the contract, my $1 million that I had coming. Anyway, so I said, hey Ed, I said, that gun you have in your glove box, I'll get it right now, and I'll do it for you, because you've been good to me. I said, you've been paying me $100 every week, paying Freddie Marino $100 a week, my trainer, giving me all these beautiful ladies to go spend some time with that work for you at your strip club. And you've done a lot for me. One time your boys came, when they came from Chicago, they were all Italians, and they were in the back room, and he said, oh, Mando, stay here, watch the girls strip, order a steak dinner. I'm going to talk to my friends, my boys, in the back office, in his manager's office behind the strip club. I got to take care of some business. Go ahead and eat a steak. And after he finished doing his business, he called me back there, and he introduced me to all these Italians. They had deep, heavy accent from Chicago. And one of them said, Zambrano, that's Italiano. Mando, Zambrano's Italiano. I remember him telling me that. I'm like, okay, yeah. Anyway, so he gave me a big old rock of crystal meth. And he said, take that back to the halfway house. I was still at the halfway house. He said, sell it to those crazy white boys that like to smoke that crystal meth. Don't you use it, though. You just sell it and make money. So he was good to me. Ed was good, rest in peace. So I told him, I said, let me get that gun and I'll take care of it. I'll handle it for you. Right now, I'll just wait for him outside. And I'll take care of this fucking Korean dude for you, Ed. And he got mad. He said, don't you ever get involved in my mob affairs. You stay the fuck out of it. You're just my fighter, and that's all. He said, right now, I'm venting because I know Johnny recommended you to me, and I trust in Johnny that you're not going to say anything. That's why I'm venting in front of you, but I'm not talking to you. I'm just talking out loud because I'm venting. Pissed the fuck off because, like I said, I sent 2 hitmen to kill this son of a bitch in Korea, and here he is in LA. He goes, I'm just venting. Don't you ever get in my business. He said, that's a big no-no. You're just my fighter and my fighter only. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. Keep that in mind. And I let it go. I said, all right, Ed. Just trying to help. He's like, I know, I understand, but just stay out of my affairs. My mom affairs. Don't get involved. I said, all right, Ed, we got it. And that was the end of that. I never spoke to him about his business ever again. But anyway, you know, in the boxing game, you meet a lot of people that are, you know, involved in the mob, especially, you know, the Italian mob, because that's who ran boxing back then in the 80s, in the 70s, 80s. I just happened to start fighting in the 80s, and they were still had their hand in everything that had to do with boxing. The Italians did. So anyway, so Ed was a good friend, though. You know, he helped me out a lot. He got pissed off when I got busted. I ended up catching a drug charge, and I went back to prison. That's when he cut me loose, because he told me from the beginning, he said, don't ever use drugs. As long as you're my fighter, I don't want you doing what S.T. Gordon did. He buys a big old chicken and a big old bag of cocaine, and he invites all his people from back east here to Los Angeles, and they barbecue, and they all snort cocaine together. And he said, don't you do that to me, Mando. Stay off the drugs. And I promised I would. So when I got that charge and I went back to prison, that was the end of it. He cut me loose. I let him down, you know. Anyway, so in the boxing game, I know it's a combat sport, and you're athletic and all that. You train and spar very hard like I used to, but I would do drugs on the side every now and then. A lot of professional fighters do. Camacho used to snort cocaine in the bathroom at the Azteca boxing. Bobby Chacon, he used to drop reds. Mando Ramos, the boxing legend from Long Beach, California, the homie Mando Ramos from Long Beach, California, raised in Wilmington too, longshoreman. He used to drop reds. All the fighters that I knew back then would do drugs, some kind of drug, either alcohol or pills or heroin or cocaine. It was just part of the fight game. There was a lot of women after the fight parties, after fight parties, and they like to get high and have sex, you know, all high on cocaine, because you can have sex for hours. And so all the fighters used to indulge with all these ring girls and hookers, high-class hookers that are at the fights in Vegas and other big casinos, hotels. So, like I said, after fight parties, and a lot of the fighters got introduced to drugs in that fashion, that way, through the after fight parties that they had at those big casinos in Atlantic City and Vegas, all the big casinos. Anyway, so in the boxing, pro boxing in California, in that business, you run into a lot of homies from different gangs. Like I said, from Harpies, from Adan Wolfboy Estrada from Harpies, Javier de la Cruz from Harpies, Chango Leonardo Chango Moreno from Hazard, Gato Morphine from South Los. I mean, there was just so many of them. Rafa from Redlands, the heavyweight. I mean, there was just so many homies that were professional fighters that I ran into. Jaws from Sanfed, the heavyweight. He was with me in Soledad prison too. We used to play chess together. He got me in one of his fights here in Vegas. He got me in for free when he fought some dude named Cooper. He ended up knocking him out at the Silver Nugget. He got me in free. Remember me playing chess with me in Soledad. There's so many fighters. Eddie the Animal Lopez from Hazard. I mean, I can just go on and on. Different professional fighters. Paritos Ortiz from Old Town National City, and Cristobal, his brother. I mean, shit, there's just so many homies that are from different barrios that are fighters, professional fighters back then, in the 70s, 80s, in the 80s when I fought, in the 80s. But anyway, so, I mean, I did a lot of stuff in my short lifespan back then, you know.
worked as a federal firefighter with the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture Forest Service. I was a certified Type 1 wildland firefighter. Type 2 is volunteers and inmates. Type 1, which I was, is a professional, highly trained Navy SEAL type of firefighter. We're highly trained in handling C4, plastic explosives, dynamite, TNT, drip torches, fusees, chainsaws, and scrapers, Pulowskis. We repel out of airships. We do so much. That's why we're Type 1. We're highly trained, certified wildland firefighters. I was a Bear to White hotshot, Los Angeles River Ranger District, the Angeles National Forest. My station was the Bear to White Ranger Station in Fire Barracks up in Santa Clarita, California, right below Camp 13, which is a heli shot. Heli-tac, not heli shot. Heli shots are the ones that get off the chopper, the airship, the UV-2 engineer helicopter, and they cut scratch line. Those are the heli shots. Heli-tac are the ones that just stay on board and drop water buckets on the fire from up in the air. Those are heli-tac, and that was a heli-tac camp up the hill from us, Camp 13. They were they were LA County heli-tac chopper crew was up the hill from us, Camp 13. They called it. They would come and barbecue with us at times. There was no inmate crews around that area at all, Santa Clarita. But we used to see the inmates out in the fire lines. Some of them knew me. I would actually hear people say, "Hey, Mondo, what's up? How'd you get that job, dog?" Federal firefighter. And Mike Allred, my superintendent, he was an asshole. He would tell me, "Don't talk to them. If you talk to any of those inmates, you're going to get fired, inmate." He would call me an inmate because he didn't like me. But anyway, that's a different story. I did a lot of stuff. I worked in the oil refineries. When I was doing all the street gang politics on the streets, I knew a lot of people. I was in prison at Delano with Lalo from Lomas, rest in peace. He was also with me in YTS. He was on walk alone. I was on walk alone too because I had come out of my handcuffs and they kept sending me from one ag-seg hold to another ag-seg and they would lose my property. I ended up taking a letter of Wheeler Kite from Black Dan, rest in peace, to Lalo. Whatever the Wheeler said after I shot it to Lalo, he was on walk alone, one man cell, and so was I. He got the kite, and then the next day he said, "Hey, Mondo, thanks for bringing the kite from Daniel, from my brother." And I said, "Oh, yeah, no problem." And he's like, "By the way, you want to move in with me?" Whatever Daniel told him at that Wheeler, he ended up moving in. He goes, "You're on walk alone, I'm on walk alone, don't trip, I'll talk to the Hudas." And he had a lot of juice. He's a big guy, big homie. So he got me to sign a waiver, and they ended up selling me up with Lalo before he went to the Bay. We were Sally's there, and we were in YTS earlier, in our earlier years, like I was saying earlier, youth authority together. So we already knew each other. And while I was in this cell, I ended up hiding in some dudes from Bakersfield, but he was a farmero, undercover farmero. They accidentally put me in his cell. Lalo went to the law library. I went to clinic, and when I came back, the guards put me in his cell on accident. He was out in the yard, the farmero from Bakersfield. He was out in the yard. Lalo was at law library, and then Lalo came back, and I told the neighbors from that guy from Bakers, that farmero, his neighbors were from Chicas. So I knocked on the wall and I said, "Hey, Mike, homie Chicas." And he's like, "Well, what's up, man? What are you doing in there?" I'm like, "The Hudas put me in here, dog. I'm like hiding in this fool cell. I'm gonna get him when he comes back from yard. I'm gonna hide under the bed." So I said, "Send a wheeler to Lalo. I need the candy, the hard candy, so I can get this fool good." And they ended up getting the hard candy for me on a line. They threw a line down to Lalo. Lalo came back from Lalo Berry, put one on there for me, and
the homies from Chicas got it, and then I made a quick little line because they were right next door to that guy's cell, so I just had to shoot the line next door. So I made a short little line real quick out of some boxers that was on this clothesline out of the string. I made a little line and put one of his little ketchup containers as the weight, and I slid it next door, and they pulled it in, and the homies from Chica said, all right, go ahead, pull it, and I pulled it. So now I'm hiding under this dude's bed, waiting for him to come back from his yard release, and I was going to come up from under the bed and get him, you know. But the cops did a count, an emergency count, because I was missing, and the cop remembered that he put me in that cell. And so it was, I think, a setup. The cops just wanted to fuck me up because I had slipped my handcuffs at Pom Pom, stabbed that loudmouth that was disrespecting me, threatening my life. And the DA didn't pick it up, so I was on the shit list. For a lot of cops didn't like me. Some would bring me contraband, some didn't like me. It just depended on what cop it was. Anyway, I think it was a setup. They wanted me to get caught with something in that dude's cell so they could charge me with inmate manufactured weapon or whatever for stabbing the fool. Because if he would have came back from yard, I would have got him. But they did the emergency count. And as they're counting, the guy remembered, wait a minute, I put Zambrano in this cell right here. He remembered walking me back from the clinic, and he put me in the wrong cell. So they went and put on their, because I wasn't coming out, they kept saying, come out from under the bed. And I'm like, shh, I was quiet. I didn't say shit. I was hiding under the bed. So they said, all right, we'll be back. We're going to go suit up to put the riot gear on and get the shield before running in there, because they didn't know if I was armed or what. They knew I was under the bed, though. They kept saying, get out from under there, and I just stayed there hiding. I said, fuck it, till the gun towers fall, I'm going to stay right here. Wait for this fool to come from yard or whatever. So when they left to go suit up, I banged on the wall, and I said, hey, homie, send the line, dog. They're going to search this motherfucker, and they find this fierro. I'm done, homie. And so they sent the little weight over with the line. I tied the fierro, the knife, back on the line, and they pulled it back in. Sure enough, the freaking guards came to the dude's cell, and they said, we're going to ask you one more time, come out from under that bed. I hid back under the bed. And they said, all right, open cell, whatever number it was. And the guard tower up in the booth opened it. And they ran in. They pulled me from underneath the bed, beat me down. The fucking gooner, the goon squad, they had the helmets on now and the shield and all that, all the riot gear on. And they carried me out, one leg, one arm, another guard had one arm, another guard had one leg. 4 guards carried me, one arm, one leg, one arm. 4 guards carried me like that down into the stand-up cage in my boxers, and they threw me in the stand-up cage. They left me in there all freaking day. They strip searched me. They didn't find nothing because I had already sent the knife to the neighbor. Anyway, so they beat me down, and then they ended up sending me from Delano a few days later to Wasco, and they put me on an integrated yard, and some shit went on. They were warring on the integrated yard, black, brown, and south, north, Mexicans all in one little yard. So I ended up catching another write-up there for fighting with some busters, that we were warring with at the time. And that was my life story right there, They would send me to another prison, and they would put me on Wacolo, where I was just going out to the yard by myself. I'd go to another prison, they would put me in Ixeg on an integrated yard, where all the enemies are once again in a little tiny yard, and something would jump off. I would always kick it off. So that was my life right there, Sometimes I would be put in cells with northerners while I was handcuffed behind my back, and they would take flight on me. That happened a couple of times. Like I said in my other story, in Chino, they put me in a North Daniel cell from Redwood, and he took off on me, and I ended up fucking him up with just my knees, legs, and my head butting him. And then when I went to medical, I slipped my cuffs, and I ran up on him now while he was handcuffed, and I threw some punches at him while the guards were walking him to medical treatment assistant to get him checked out, because I head butted him and kneed him while I was handcuffed in the cell when he took off on me. So I ended up running up on him. The lieutenant said he just saw my empty karate shoes on the floor, and he saw me run across the hall, and I started hitting the northerner from Redwood. Daniel Felix was his name. I took flight on him. I said, "How does it feel, motherfucker, to get took off on when you're handcuffed?" And they tackled me and took out leg irons from the control booth at Chino and cuffed me all back up. I mean, I was used to that kind of way of life, going to war with the TRGs and the Asian boys and all them different Asian gangs, Sons of Samoa, and all the different gangs that we war with. Not to disrespect anybody, but everybody knows Long Beach is black and brown and Asian on brown gang war. It's been like that for years. So we used to get along really good with the Samoans. I grew up with a lot of the Samoan brothers. I love them like brothers now, because I'm done with that way of life. I'm older now. But anyway, fighting with them, you grow up hardcore. You grow up using these right here in Long Beach if you're a little Mexican like me. And so that's why boxing just happened to fall right into my way of life. So I was athletic, but a drug addict as well. But I knew how to use these from fighting on the streets in Long Beach and in the different prisons. One time I was at Wayside when I was a young kid, 19-year-old or whatever. No, I was a little older, 21-year-old. I had already done 3 years in prison. I went in when I was 18. I got out when I was 21. 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah, I did 3 years that time. And I got out when I was 21. And so they put me in Wayside minimum, the green jumpsuits, where it's all dorm living. And I was getting in fights because it was rocking and rolling in those dormitories at the LA County Jail, even though it was minimum custody. Every black and brown inmates in every dorm were fighting in big riots while I was there. So sometimes they would come and get me. Hey, there's going to be a head up, so it's not a big riot today, because we got visitors coming and we got drugs coming in. So how about you just handle it one-on-one with this black dude, because some shit happening that needs to be handled. But we just wanted Blinky from Maravilla, an old timer, came and he said, "Hey Mando, how would you like to handle this business for the homies?" Back then in the 80s, Maravilla and the Sureños were all good. So Blinky from Mariana, I think he was from the glasses, big tall Blinky from Maravilla. He said, "Everybody says you know how to box. You've already gotten into quite a few fights here, and you know how to use your fist. You're a boxer. How about you go head up with this dude?" So yeah, I said, "Well, let's do it." Me and the homies, we all walked over to where this dude and his homies were, all the Crips, and the dude saw me coming with all the homies, and they were gonna make a big circle and we were gonna fight. And the dude ended up taking off running. I guess he didn't want to see me, because they had already saw that I know how to fight, from other fights that I had got into. So he took off running, and there was nothing happened. He just said, "Oh, well, Mondo's here. He was supposed to fight with your homie. What's up? Why'd he take off running?" "Well, I guess the fool doesn't want to fight. We're going to fuck his ass up now. The Crips were going to go beat his ass for doing that." And so they just ended up squashing whatever it was. It was no big deal. But the next day it was a riot, because it carried over to the next day. So, that's the kind of shit that I grew up doing most of my life, Even at YA, that would happen. The homies would say, "Hey, I'll throw down with this fool," because he disrespected one of the homies, and I would go in the cell and get down with these fools, head up. So I already knew how to use these. That's why I became a fighter, a boxing coach as well years later. Nowadays, that's what I do when I'm not injured. Right now I'm injured, so I'm not doing no boxing, no coaching. I've been injured for a few years now. I got rear-ended by a trash company, Republic Services. So I've been having spinal injections. I'm getting ready to have spinal stimulator surgery for that accident. And right now I'm just chilling. I'm retired right now. I'm not doing any coaching right now. I closed my gym down ever since the accident. And like I said, I'm getting ready to have spinal stimulator surgery where they stick a wire in your canal, your empty spinal canal, and then later on, if it takes, your body takes it, they install a machine outside of your back, in the lower back, where you can push a button and the wire stimulates massage up your spinal cord. So they're going to see if that bullet in the spinal stimulator wire doesn't get a bad reaction. They're going to install it and let it sit there for a while, see if the bullet takes to it. And if it doesn't, then they'll take it out and they won't install the machine. So I'm getting ready to have that now here in Vegas. So right now I'm not really doing nothing, but my family went back quite a few years in Los Angeles. Like I said, Pops used to rent a horse and buggy downtown LA at the Grand Central Market on 3rd and Broadway. It's still there, that market. It's sawdust floors. They have it's an open air market. It's still there to this day. It's been there since the late 1800s. And Pops was born in El Paso, Texas in 1911, but he was raised in the City of Angels. He came over from El Paso. Grandma was from Silver City, New Mexico, when it was still Mexico. In the 1800s, she was born there. Then they moved to Texas for a while. That's where Dad was born, in El Paso. And then they moved to LA in the 20s. So when Dad would go down there in the 20s, 1920s, late 20s, as an 11 or 12-year-old kid, him and my Uncle Joe, he was older, they would rent a horse and buggy for $1 a day and go pick oranges and sell them to help Grandma Gonzalez, my Grandma Trinidad. And my grandpa was a blonde-haired, green-eyed Spaniard from Spain. I told you guys a story where I saw the two lights come on when I died as a 14-year-old when I got shot. And I saw a man with blonde hair and green eyes talking in Spanish, and a lady with hair all up on a big bun, with a beautiful smile. I think those were my grandparents in the afterlife waiting for me to take me to my next destination as a dead spirit. I saw a lot of stuff when I was pushing that line. One time I was in Dead Man's Alley on 10th and Alamedos in Longo, beside Longo, my barrio is, and I saw a dog running with eyes on fire, a big black dog. They said that was the devil. In that same alley, I was up on this staircase. The alley's right here. Cars in the alley are driving, and there's a staircase that goes up like that, and there's a recliner up there. It was a black guy named Willie. That was his little spot on the second floor. It was out looking to the alley, Dead Man's Alley. You could walk right down the street, stairs, and you're in Dead Man's Alley. And his recliner was up here, his door was outside. It was a 4-unit, 2-story apartment, and his was on the top floor. So we'd go up the stairs right there. We'd go out of our shack in the alley, go up the stairs and go smoke weed at Willie's, black guy's man. And we'd take girls up there and everything. So do our thing up in Willie's. He let us chill up there. He sold weed. He was an old-timer, old black guy. Willie was good people. And so me and my homeboy Burrito were waiting for Willie, and I was sitting on the recliner, and Burrito was sitting on one of the steps, and we were smoking weed, and we were waiting for Willie, and it was like 12 midnight. Willie hadn't rolled up. We saw his car parked there, but his moped was gone. He used to keep it chained at the bottom of the staircase to the little wooden, stairway post. He would chain it up to there at the bottom of the stairs. So we knew he was on his moped. And so Burrito said, I just live right around the corner, homie, you already know. He says, I'm going home, man. I'm tired, I'm getting sleepy, this weed's got me tired. He goes, just come to my house and knock out. And we'll come to Willie's later, and when we wake up to get some weed. And I said, nah, homie, just go ahead and do your thing. I'm going to wait for Willie. I want to get some more weed before I go home. I lived a few more blocks away on 7th and Olive. Burrito lived right there on 11th and Alamedos, in the corner house right there. And so it was just a block away. And I said, no, go ahead, you go home. I'll chill right here. and I heard a moped. I was by myself, and it's like after midnight now, and I'm sitting on in our hood right there in the Callejon. Our clubhouse was right down the stairs in Pancho's backyard, our clubhouse. So I was right here in our hood, and I heard the moped coming, and as the moped got closer, I could see somebody that looked like Willie, a tall person. He was really tall and skinny, and they had a helmet on with a visor, and they pull up in the alley, and he stops at the bottom of the stairs, and he's looking down towards the floor, so I can't see his face. I can just see the top of the helmet with the visor. So he starts going towards the stairs, and he picks the moped up, and he puts it on his shoulder like this with one hand, and he's looking down at the stairs, walking up the stairs like this. And when he got right to where I was sitting at the top of the staircase, he looked up, and his face was white, like a t-shirt, white, and his eyes were on fire, and there was smoke coming out of his nose. It was the devil. And he looked right at me with those eyes that were on fire, blazing. Fire was coming out of his eyes, and white smoke, white face, like when I got shot, and I lost all that blood like that. He looked like a dead person, pale dead, that kind of white, like a t-shirt. His face was that color, and his nose, like I said, was smoke. Big old plumes of smoke was coming out of his nose, and his eyes were on fire. And I wanted to jump over the stairwell out from the second story. I was gonna try to get the fuck away from this devil, demonic thing that was looking right at me, looking face to face at me. But I was so fucking scared, I couldn't move. I was stuck in the recliner. I wanted to get up and jump off of the fucking second story, but I couldn't. I was scared, stiff. I could not move, not even a leg, an ankle, nothing. My feet, my hands, everything was stuck from being scared straight, like a stiff fucking body on the recliner. I could not move. I couldn't even really breathe. That's how scared I was from looking in this fucking demonic figure's face. And then the moped falls off of his shoulder, and it goes down the stairs. Bam, 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 bam. And he looked at me for a couple more seconds with those eyes blazing red, fire coming out of his eyes, smoke coming out of his nose, and he turned around and he walked down the stairs. He got on, picked the moped up, it was back on two wheels, put it on the stand, started it up, and drove off down the alley, down Dead Man's Alley. I was still stuck. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I was stuck to the freaking chair. A lot of people had been killed in that alley. There was a lot of demonic, evil stuff happening in the Callejon. Homies know what I'm talking about. That are from the hood. Been in that alley. The shack, we call it Chico's Model Shack. A lot of homies died in that alley. Murdered, gangbanging. So I finally was able to get out of that chair, and I ran down the stairs, and I ran home. I ran past Burrito's house all the way to 7th and Olive, which is a few blocks away. And I ran up the stairs to my room on the second floor. And I was sitting on my bed, and my mom came in. She goes, "What happened?" And I told her exactly what I just said right now, the story I just told you guys. And my mom said that was the devil that was appearing to me, because I was already jumped into a hood and gangbanging and doing shootings and shit like that on the enemies, fighting on the streets all the time, getting kicked out of all the different schools in Long Beach. I was kicked out of all the Long Beach Unified School District. I had to go to school in Belmont Shores, in an all-white neighborhood where they had a probation school. The teachers were probation officers. They had a badge and everything, handcuffs. They were LA County probation officers, and they ran the school. It was called Will Rogers Elementary School, and junior high, Will Rogers Junior High in Belmont Shores. It was all white neighborhood, classy neighborhood, but the school was ran by probation officers, pretty much cops, with badges on their belt, handcuffs, and all that mace. They ran the special guidance class, they called it. The rest of the school was all white boys and white girls. A few homies here and there that lived close to Belmont Shores, but like I said, the whole school was white. except for the guidance class. That was the homies. I ended up stabbing Toro from West Side Longo. We were going at it with the West Side at the time, and he ended up calling me a cheese sider. And we were in the same guidance class. He was in there for fighting, getting kicked out of Long Beach Unified School District as well. That's why he was going to school in Belmont Shores. And he ended up stabbing me in the arm with a pen, and I stabbed him with my pencil right here. To this day, when he died a few years ago, he still had Toro from the West. I still had that little dot. Everybody thought it was a tattoo, and they would ask him about the tattoo, and he would say, "No, it's not a tattoo. Your homeboy Mondo stabbed me when we were in the guidance class with a pen or a pencil. I don't remember, but he had a blue dot right here. When I stabbed him, he stabbed me too, though, with a pencil or a pen, whatever, in my arm, and I had that same blue dot on my arm, forearm from him. Now I got all these tattoos. You can't see it, but when I was a kid, you could." Christy and them that went to that school with me in Chapo, the homeboy Chapo, Eastside Longo, Briones. I remember going back home on the bus that day, and I showed him where I got stabbed. I didn't have tattoos back then. I was a kid, 14-year-old, whatever, 15-year-old. I already got shot. But anyway, I didn't like them guys from the West Side because they had shot me. So that's why I had words with Toro that day. He stabbed me, and then I stabbed him too, right here. So, yeah, I was just getting in a lot of shit at a young age, getting stabbed and shot. It's just a way of life for us homeboys from Longo. From all over LA, it's the same shit, all the different gangs that I ran around with in LA. When I was over there in the avenues, in 43rd Park with the avenues homies, Termite and Chito and all them, his brother Chito on 43rd, Cowboy and all them. I was kicking it with them. They were getting into it with the vatos from Serrano all the time. And I was in the middle of all that shit too, because I used to hang out with them over there. When I hung out with Florence, they would go at it with 38. I was all in the middle of that too. And when I lived in Compton, I would chill with the vatos from the 7-O's, Smokey and them from Compton Barrio 70s. I lived in their barrio. I lived in Watts, for 103rd and Lou Dillon in Watts. The parents of Watts took me in, and I lived there for quite a while. That was the last place I lived, actually. When I was running around in Florence, I was living in Watts for 103rd and Lou Dillon. And I also lived in Watts when my homeboy Cricket and the homie Pato, then they made Boulevard Nights, rest in peace, Cricket. Misa Longo, Villanueva, they made that movie Boulevard Nights. I was going with them from Watts, from their grandma's house to the Boulevard in Whittier, because it was closer. We didn't have to go all the way to Long Beach. We would go to their grandma's house in Watts from East LA, from the Boulevard Whittier. After filming, they would film the movie Boulevard Nights. We'd go to their grandma's, and the next day go film again. And I would take my little 22 with me, pistol, and watch their back while they were filming. We'd be getting in fights right there because they were real gang members. Cricket and Pato. Pato was his brother, the Morales brother. He was from Puente Trece. Cricket was from Eastside Longo, and their little brother, Little Cricket, was from Eastside Longo. All three of them were in the movie. And they ended up firing Little Cricket because they found him in one of the lowriders from the movie, asleep in the back seat, all drunk. So they fired him, but he did come out in a couple of scenes. But anyway, so I would go with them to watch their back while they were filming Boulevard Nights, and they lived in Watts, their grandma's, by Elm Street, by the Watts Tower. We'd be running around down there in Watts too, way out of bounds. We were all from Longo, except for Pato. He was from Puente, but all the other brothers, Casper, Little Cricket, Big Cricket, Mario, they were all from Eastside Longo. The only brother that they had was Pato from Puente Trece. I was the only one that was not from Eastside Longo, but he would always back us up. He would say, "I'm from Puente Trece, but I back up Eastside Longo." When they hit him up, Boulevard. His three brothers are from Eastside Longo, so he backed us up too. But anyway, yeah, so growing up in those different hoods that I lived in, all that was just a way of life, fighting. Like I said, boxing as a professional. Some of my sparring partners were gangsters from different parts of LA. you know, it was just a way of making money using these right here. You know, using the dogs, throwing the dogs to get paid. And I did that for a while too. So, you know, that's about it. I'm gonna let you guys go. Take care now.